What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Early Edge NFL Kickoff Show, brought to you by BetMGM, the sportsbook born in Vegas. Will Brinson, Sia Nejad, Alex Selznick, and RJ White here to break down probably, arguably, the single best primetime game of the entire NFL slate. How we doing, fellas?
I mean, you just nailed it right there. Bub Means, Mason Tipton, a little Juwan Johnson, Devon Vele action. Brinson, this is going to be electric. I can't wait.
I will take anything over the Flag Fest of Monday. It was just get that off my screen. I don't want to watch that.
Yes.
I'm still licking my wounds. RJ beat me in a showdown exactly 1 week ago today. So I'm going to be looking for my get back today, RJ.
Nice. 3-0 on my picks that last week, by the way.
Ooh, nice. I love it. Broncos-Saints. Broncos at Saints, the Sean Payton Revenge Bowl. We have the Broncos as a 2.5-point favorite on our SportsLine Early Edge NFL Kickoff Show. Or no, the Early Edge NFL Pick Show. Excuse me. This is the Kickoff Show. At 2:00 today, RJ pointed out, like, how are you not on the Broncos, Brinson? This is your wheelhouse, Sean Payton Revenge. And it's just really difficult to say, I'm going to lay 3 with Bo Nix on the road. Having said that, the Saints were absolutely decimated. That's why the total, the spread is kicked up to 3. Kind of surprisingly high total of 37, which is not what I expected to say either. Sia, thoughts on side or total here for this game?
Yeah, I like a side here. If you watched the Early Edge this morning, or if you are a member of SportsLine, which everybody in the chat should be, or at least I hope they are, I've got this at -2.5. I see it's kicked up in a lot of places to -3. I mean, Will, you kind of presented the argument for me to a degree. We don't want to bet on Bo Nix away from home necessarily, but before we get to the Saints issues, let's talk about what Denver has done on the road. They've got 2 road wins against the Jets and, of course, stomping the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And then you add that they've got a good defense and they're going against an offense that, headlined by Spencer Rattler, Bub Means, Mason Tipton, and Cedric Wilson Jr. And, of course, Alvin Kamara, but also no Taysom Hill. Offensive line is kind of a mess here. This is just one of those situations where I personally look at each phase. Let's leave out special teams, the coaching phase. Sean Payton, if you want to run that narrative, that's great, but he's a better coach than Dennis Allen. You look at the offensive side of the ball, it looks like Denver has the edge. You look at the defensive side of the ball, certainly even without Patrick Surtain, it looks like Denver has the edge. So this is one where I think the line is probably right to move to 3. I think you can still take it at 3. And I think the Broncos, speaking of threes, in case anybody forgot, they're 3-3, and this is a very average AFC. And I think the Broncos actually have aspirations. If you look at the records among all the AFC teams, you'll see that the Broncos are firmly in the discussion to make the wild card here. So it's not like they don't have much to play for. And the Saints, things are not exactly looking up. So whether you want to take a ride down narrative street or whether you want to look at the personnel on the field or the coaches on the field, it all screams orange to me.
So the Saints are just the 3rd team in NFL history to win their first 2 games by 20-plus points and then proceed to lose their next 4 games in a row. The previous 2 were the 65 Cowboys and the 21 Cleveland Indians, which, I mean, in other words, like this has never happened post-merger. That is wild. You can attribute a lot to injury, and we'll get to y'all the other picks in a second. I mean, I feel like with this game, we should go and throw up the inactives, rather than like other, instead of dancing around it. I know we had that graphic ready. I mean, like this is a bloodbath from an injury perspective. We have Derek Carr, Taysom Hill, Chris Olave, Pete Werner, Jordan Mims, Colleen Saunders, and Cesar Ruiz, all inactive for the Saints. On the Broncos side, Greg Dulcich out. More importantly, Pat Surtain, who might be the best cornerback in all of football. Zach Wilson active as an emergency quarterback. Chris Abrams drain. Alex Pazelski, Dondre Tillman, and Uwa Zariki is out as well. So it's just like there's just a lot of people out across the board, Proppy. And I think that makes it kind of interesting when you look at it. Like the Saints are playing with backups right now. The Saints are basically a preseason team.
Let me preface by saying I like how you merged my name with that player.
I did. I did do
was pretty
that.
cool.
I did do that.
Him and I are like a hybrid now. But
I got into cells and I just went Nick.
but yeah, to your point, to Sia's point, I like the Broncos here quite a bit. I think they're as you mentioned, 3-3. They're playing hard. This defense is super legit. Third in EPA allowed per play. They've been an exceptional coverage team. PFF's second-rated coverage unit overall. Ninth in EPA allowed per rush. So this is an exceptional defense that's played lights out. Certainly the best unit overall in this game. If we're judging everything, offense, defense, special teams, I would say the best unit of all of those would be this Broncos unit. And then when we talk about the Saints, you mentioned getting off to the start and losing 4 straight. They scored the most points in NFL history over the first 2 weeks of the season. And we know the offense has cratered for New Orleans since that explosion where I believe they only had 2 offensive touchdowns in the first 2 weeks, despite scoring all those points. The defense has completely cratered as well. This defense is really struggling. They started out as an exceptional coverage unit. They're missing multiple starters. Alante Taylor, Honey Badger, Tyrann Mathieu, JT Gray. Those are all starters from the Saints secondary that are out or injured for this game. So, a lot of the attention goes to New Orleans' offensive struggles, but the defense has been just horrendous as well. So I'm with Sia here. I also like the Broncos in this spot quite a bit.
RJ, I know what you like because we did a show earlier today, but go ahead and tell the people what you like.
Yeah, now that it's at 3, I like the Saints. I'm going to be the contrarian of the group because, yes, the Saints are all banged up, but Patrick Surtain is a massive loss. We saw how bad that defense played against the Chargers after he went out. The Chargers dominated that game. I know the final score didn't look as bad, but it was one of those games like Ravens-Cowboys where the game was in hand, and it just got a little closer at the end of the game than it probably deserved to be. They have these injuries. You talk about the defense's crater. They've played a lot of tough offenses too, playing teams like Atlanta and Tampa who've been going up and down the field on everyone. Kansas City, Philly was only scored 15, but they were going up and down the field. Those are still good offenses. This is not one of those teams with Bo Nix. And we're getting excited about Devon Vele when he comes back and catches another 6 passes or whatever he had last week out of obscurity. This is not a team with a lot of options. There's a reason this total is very low. I do not like laying 3 points with a quarterback like Bo Nix on the road against anyone. And I think New Orleans can overcome these injuries. Spencer Rattler looked pretty solid last week, even after Chris Olave got hurt. Rashid Shaheed was not a factor, caught 1 of his 7 targets, and Rattler was still moving the ball and getting it done without contributions from those guys. So I don't think the New Orleans offense is necessarily sunk here. I think you fade Bo Nix laying 3 on the road in a short week. So that's kind of my play there on the Saints. I also have a play on the points. I think there could be slightly more points than people expect because I do think this New Orleans offense can score a little bit. The Denver defense, if it is struggling a bit without Surtain, I think there's more upside to that Saints offense. 37 is a very small number, considering this game is indoors, where the scoring should be easier, especially when you look at the new kickoff rules that make it easier to get into field goal range. Mike McClure, I think, brought this up earlier in the day. We only need a couple first downs to get a field goal when you're kicking at optimal conditions here. So if Denver does its job getting over 17.5 points, like everybody's thinking, I think New Orleans does enough to get this into the scoring band of 41 to 50, which is plus 260 at MGM. I think this number probably should be closer to 200, where it typically is for a total that's around 41 and a half. I would rather play this than both teams scoring to 20 in case you get like a 27-17 game, 24-17 game. But I think that's a nice little sprinkle there at plus 260 to take the total points to end in the 41 to 50 band. Not outrageous for an indoor game here.
Yeah, I'll add to that too. I mean, I like what RJ's saying about Spencer Rattler. If you watch that game, they kind of self-destructed in the second half, and that really wasn't all Spencer Rattler's fault. And I got to admit, I was really impressed with how he managed the offense and moved the ball. I think in this case, I think he maybe can do it, but again, he is dealing with not exactly like top tier receivers here. Of course, it is receivers he's practiced with, but not only that, I think that Denver pass rush is going to get to him too. And I think he will be prone to potentially making a mistake. Don't forget, for those that are like, well, he's got a game under his belt, that's great. The flip side of that argument is, well, he's got a game under his belt, so Denver now has tape on him and kind of know what his tendencies are and where his flaws lie. So I do think Spencer Rattler may be able to move the ball, but I also think he's likely, or maybe the receivers, like Bub Means had a bad play, I believe a fumble last week too. I think they're going to be mistakes on the offensive side of the ball as well for the Saints.
I want to point one other thing out too on the receiver. Just because two are hurt doesn't mean that they have only three receivers. They did elevate two people from the practice squad. One of them is Equinemius St. Brown, who has some experience in the league. Not an amazing receiver, but he's not a nobody either. And he did catch a touchdown pass in the preseason from Spencer Rattler. So like those two have worked a little bit together earlier in the preseason. And we'll see if they can connect here. And I would have loved to get like 85-1 on Equinemius St. Brown to catch a touchdown before he was on the active roster, but I don't think anybody's given St. Brown first touchdown prop out.
Right. I would point out too, like from a narrative perspective, Dennis Allen was like heavily on the hot seat coming into this season. And, you know, the Saints fans were not thrilled with him. They're now 2-4 after that hot start. People were all over Clint Kubiak. And now it's like all the injuries are an excuse. But if you beat Sean Payton in his first time playing the Saints and get to 3-4, push the Broncos. I mean, I know they're not in the same conference, but like get to 3-4 and get back in the race in the NFC South. Like this is a massive game for the Saints. Yeah. Like a game they can win. I mean, they're 3-point dogs, but they're not, you know, they're not 12-point home underdogs here. You win this game and you really buy yourself a little breathing room, especially if it looks like Spencer Rattler might be, you know, the quarterback of the future, plays well. Let's get to player props because I am extremely interested in the idea of both Sean Payton and Clint Kubiak wanting to not like turnovers are going to be key in this game. They were key in every game, but like it's big here. And then what better way to protect your quarterback from making a mistake by passing the ball than by using their ability as a rusher on designed runs? I love Bo Nix over 25.5 rushing yards. I know it's juiced to 130. Don't really care. I think it's a great play. You can toss Bo Nix 25 plus alternate rushing yards as a great parlay piece. And I think Spencer Rattler, I don't have this as one of my plays, but Spencer Rattler's rushing yards are a good look as well. I think they're going to use some design runs. I think he'll scramble if he's under pressure, and he's a pretty good runner. And yeah, probably good. I was going to say I think both quarterbacks are live to get like north of 40 rushing yards in this game fairly easily.
Bo Nix, I believe, more rushing yards than any rookie quarterback, obviously, besides Jaden Daniels. 5th most rushing yards for any quarterback, period. 5th in yards after contact, 8th in forced missed tackles. So Bo Nix has been very good rushing the football. 3rd most attempts from scrambles, 2nd most yards from scrambles as well. So I like that Bo Nix prop quite a bit, which will lead me to my props here. Starting with Devon Vele, going over 31.5 receiving yards. He's emerged as one of Bo Nix's favorite targets. Besides Cortland Sutton, he's the only pass catcher on this team with a plus 20% market share as far as targets are concerned. And considering it's only 31.5 yards for a guy who's going to basically be on the field for pretty much every single Bo Nix drop back, I couldn't resist this number here. So I'm going with Devon Vele, who's proven to have some chemistry with Bo Nix as well. I talked earlier about all the injuries to this New Orleans secondary as well. So I like this spot for Vele over 31.5 receiving yards. And then I'm actually going to back Javonte Williams over 67 combined rushing and receiving yards. For a variety of reasons, it's twofold. Javonte Williams to start the season was absolutely dreadful. Completely inefficient, ineffective. Looked like they were maybe looking at other options as well. But he's actually looked a lot better the last 3 weeks of the season, running with some juice here. The yards per carry was started the season sub 3.0 over the first 3 weeks, just 4.5 over the last 3 weeks. So starting to look a little bit better there. I also love the fact, the reason I'm attacking the combo line is because the Broncos throw to the running back at the second highest rate in the NFL. And I mentioned the target share with Cortland Sutton and Vele being the only guys with 20%. Well, Javonte Williams is right beneath them at 18%, which is significant for a running back, which is why I'm choosing to take this combo line here. And then lastly, this matchup, this Saints defense has absolutely cratered down the stretch. They have gotten run all over as well the last few weeks here. So if we know or we think that Javonte Williams is going to be the guy and he's going to get the lion's share of the backfield touches, which he has thus far, and he does look like he's playing a bit better, this is certainly a great spot for him. So that's why I'm backing him here. And then I've got one more prop. I'm actually going to fade Alvin Kamara. I'm going under 109 combined rushing and receiving yards. That's just a large total, even for Kamara. And much like Kamara, his numbers sort of mimic this New Orleans offense. Started out red hot, had very efficient games to start the season. The first 2 weeks played really well. He has not played well the last 4 weeks. Completely inefficient. 13 carries, 40 yards last week for 3.1 yards per carry. 11 for 26 the week prior for 2.4 yards per carry. 19 for 77, 4.1 yards per carry. 26 for 87, 3.3 yards per carry. Those are some significant workloads for Kamara as well. And we're talking about a short week here. And then we're talking about this Denver defense who has inarguably been one of the best defenses in the league, almost equally as good in against the run as they are in coverage. 9th in EPA allowed per rush. And with all these guys missing from the offense, including Spencer Rattler under center, I really feel that Denver can key in on Kamara here, who looks already run down to me, in my opinion. He's just not running with the same juice he was to start the season. He's going to see a lot of 8-man boxes tonight as well. He's going to be the focus of this Broncos game plan, the defensive game plan. So I like fading Kamara here. Sorry to hear that, Brad Betts. Hopefully we stay under and he scores you 3 or 4 touchdowns in the process.
Yeah, look, I think the Javonte thing is pretty sharp. The Saints defense is just really bad. While you were going over your props, Proppy, I was actually looking at running some lineups featuring Javonte as captain, because he's, in DFS purposes, I think he's looking at like around 10 to 12% or something like that. Everybody's going Kamara, obviously, and then loading up on Bo Nix as well. And so I think Javonte a really interesting pivot, especially if. And, maybe Aldrich estimates the closer here. I sort of like his over on rushing yards, or he gets involved at least. But Sean Payton wants to win this game, Sia. And if Javonte's running really well, I think he's going to keep feeding him as much as he can. What do you have for player props?
So I don't have any official player props. My official play is on the Denver -2.5. But I will say this. On the early edge this morning, I mentioned that I was going to give it a ladder play, which we'll do later. But I specifically mentioned there was a prop I was considering. I never got to it, and I'm just going to tell everybody what it is, though. It was Javonte Williams over 44.5 rushing yards. So the reason I didn't get to it, and for the record, I love Proppy's pick. The reason I didn't get to it is because you brought up Aldrich Estime. Of course, Jaleel McLaughlin on this team as, in theory, the running back 2 here. I started to look at Javonte's rushing attempts. It was 12.5 yesterday, but it was juiced to the under, and that makes sense. Those other 2 running backs going to get some play. It's now at 11.5. And honestly, I think Javonte sails over this rushing total. I'm not talking rushing, receiving. I'm just, for purposes of this, I'm talking about rushing. But because I'm not 100% sure where the shares are going to go, how many Aldrich is going to get, how many Jaleel is going to get, I just decided to back off. But I have to say, I think the number is too low, specifically against this Saints defense, and specifically if you think that we're looking at a neutral or positive game script for the Broncos. I really like Javonte Williams to have a nice game. And Andrew Simon is asking, what do you think of the over 11.5 rush attempts? I would lean that way. I would lean to 12 to 14 rush attempts for Javonte Williams.
RJ, player props for you.
Yeah, we'll start with the man of the match, Alvin Kamara. I have him over 4.5 receptions. It was -140 when we did it for this show. It's -155 now. We got it at -125 earlier in the day. at SportsLine, everybody's hopping on this because he is a guy that can get to not just 5 receptions, but 10 receptions. He's done it 7 times in his career. So there's a potential to cash this one early. The last 3 straight weeks when Proppy's talking about his rush efficiency has gone down, he's had at least 5 receptions and at least 8 targets in all 3 of those games. You know they're going to lean on him as a pass catcher here with the injuries at receiver. I think there's potential for him to be used out at wide receiver. You have better depth at running back. Throw Jamal Williams, Kendry Miller in the backfield. Let him go catch passes as your slot guy, and that's at least a little bit of an upgrade for your receiver, quote unquote receivers. So I think there's ways for him to get this. I wouldn't be surprised if he is at 5 by the time we're at halftime or maybe slightly after, and we're all not even having to sweat this late in the game.
Yeah, I think it's a great call. I mean, he's got 25 targets in the last 3 games after just 11 in his first 3. What happened is the Saints dominated the first 2 games. They weren't having to throw to Kamara, and then they started losing games because their offense fell apart. With the offensive line fell apart. The Saints' offense wasn't as good. The defense fell back as well, and as such, the Saints were trailing, and they were having to throw the ball with a bad offensive line. Well, when you're doing that, like Alvin Kamara you're gonna get to Alvin Kamara really, really frequently, and that's why he saw all those targets. So I'm a big fan of that prop. Do you have one more you want to give out?
I have one more. We don't really know how the receiver target's going to shake out for New Orleans. I think we assume Bub Means going to be the guy because of what he did last week, but we just don't know. So I think it's really hard to figure out what you do at receiver. I don't think it's hard to figure out what to do at tight end. And that's because Jawan Johnson over the last 5 weeks, his snap share keeps going up and up and up over the first 5 weeks, and he's been at over 75% the last 2 weeks. He's on the field basically all the time, and he's going to have to be in this game where they're missing their top receivers. He's also caught all 8 of his targets for 79 yards the last 2 games. I believe we put it in at 27 or 26 earlier in the day. It's 28 now. Still like the over there. I think this should be north of 30 pretty easily because he's going to be leaned on with the receivers out. So I don't really love being the guy to keep taking overs and overs and overs, and everybody likes to be optimistic. I think it's smart to look for under situations like Proppy did with Kamara on the combo line. But man, these 2 guys are going to catch a lot of balls and get some yards here. So I like going over on both these guys.
Yeah, I mean, just on the over-under thing, yeah, unders are generally sharper. I think you see Proppy on his here has 2 overs as well. When you have a game that's got a total of 37 and a bunch of skill position guys that people aren't in on, you're going to find some lower overs that can easily cruise by. And I think that's the case here. I also had, and I'm doing what I said on my pick, Cortland Sutton over receptions. I'm making sure that you can shop around and get a decent number because, I just saw that it's so. All right, yeah, I just looked, and you can find it elsewhere. At BetMGM, it's like minus 175 or maybe even minus 180. You can find a minus 138 out there for Cortland Sutton over 3.5 receptions. And while he hadn't been the leading receiver in terms of yards, I do think he'll be the number 1 most targeted receiver by Bo Nix in this offense, particularly with the Saints struggling as much as they have. I think we see a lot of running and then maybe some couple play action shots to Sutton. I like the over on Cortland Sutton receptions. Okay. Before we go, questions from the chat. Knicks over 18.5 completions from Andrew. Andrew also asked Rattler over 28.5 pass attempts.
Let me take the Bo Nix one because, this is kind of a trip down memory lane. Thanks for asking, Andrew Simon. The first prop I put in the 2024 season was Bo Nix over 18.5 completions. It came in pretty easily. I don't know that this is the game I want to target the completions. And the reason is I think, obviously, I think Denver's going to win, right? And I think they're going to cover 3 points. Because I think they're going to be in a positive game script more than a neutral game script, I think we're just going to see a lot of running. And we talked about the 3 running backs that might all be used. If they have some ease running the ball, there's not going to be a ton of reason for Bo Nix to be chucking it around the yard to, again, Cortland Sutton, Vele, like Kroll, who are these receivers at the end of the day? Javonte going to catch some balls too, but I think 18.5 is the right number. I would stay away from that.
Yeah, if they get a lead at all, they are going to protect Bo Nix as much as humanly possible and just line up and run the ball at the Saints and force Because I mean, look, you have that defense even without Surtain, and you get a lead, and you run the ball effectively, and force Spencer Rattler into tossing the ball a bunch.
Yeah,
then you're in great shape. I mean, to that extent, and I don't know what y'all think about Rattler over 28.5 pass attempts. You probably need a pretty heavy game script that features a pretty robust Denver lead, or at least Denver leading most of the time, and Rattler being forced to throw a ton. I think the Saints believe the same thing the Broncos do. They would love nothing more than to establish the run, to turn over Bo Nix a couple times, get a lead, and then not force Spencer Rattler to get exposed as a passer.
Agree. And can I just add, and I don't think this is going to happen, but I don't think Spencer Rattler is so firmly entrenched until Derek Carr gets back that he can't have a couple or a few bad series in a row when Haener comes into this game. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but when you're looking at Spencer Rattler overs, especially overs that are going to take a while to get there, I think there's at least a 10% chance that Haener, who was the number 2 quarterback when Derek Carr got injured, I think there is a chance that he could come into this game too.
It'd be interesting if, that was the long-term plan, knowing they had the short week and they weren't going to have Derek Carr for 2 weeks, that you start Spencer Rattler and you tell Jake Haener, look, get ready, because we are going to play you in the next game. You're not going to start, but we're going to mix you in. So, if Haener gets a series here and there, we're not saying it's going to happen, but if that's what they decide to do, then it's going to be really hard to hit some of these overs on Rattler.
Yep.
And that would be the argument too. Brandon Lockwood asked, Spencer Rattler under 22.5 rushing talked me out of it. I mean, we just kind of did, right? I'm not touching that under, because I think Rattler will scramble enough to get there pretty easily. And I don't think we'll see a heavy victory formation situation in this game. I wouldn't personally touch it, but if you want to take Rattler unders, you need to tell yourself a story of, Saints leading, or Saints so bad that Rattler's pulled for Jake Haener. Longest reception, Mason Tipton under 13.5, Javonte Williams under 10.5. Sia, I'll let you take Mason Tipton.
Well, this is a good question to ask, because this is a good time. Nice segue, professional segue from MJ. My ladder play,
ladder of the day.
Yeah, the primetime ladder play, the PLP, is none other than Mason Tipton. This is a guy who, for those of you that don't know, undrafted free agent from Yale. Side note, when he was undrafted, he was approached by 2 teams. He could have gone to 2 teams. The other team that he turned down to join the Saints was the Cleveland Browns. So not only is he smart in the classroom going to Yale, but his decision's pretty smart too. But long story short, I think what he's good at, he's fast. His route running, not great. He's not special coming off the line with his releases and stuff like that. He's really good at tracking the ball. We saw a little bit of that last week on a long ball that Spencer Rattler threw that was ultimately incomplete. But we almost saw an amazing catch from Mason Tipton. And I do think he is likely to be the deep threat. So while I'm not going to take his over, and I'm not even talking about longest reception, I'm not going to take his 26.5 yardage over, but I do think he's live to catch a 40 plus or 50 plus ball. And with that in mind, 40 plus is plus 320, 50 plus is plus 550, and 60 plus sounds a little crazy, but the number's crazy too, plus 950. Again, I don't think this is going to be a shootout, but I think of all the receivers for the Saints, I think Mason Tipton is most likely to get down the field and actually catch a long ball from Spencer Rattler. So he is my ladder play of the night.
We need some theme music for that.
Can I ask you follow-ups here?
Yeah.
BetMGM has matchups for some props. Mason Tipton versus Devon Vele in receiving yards. You get minus 150 on Vele, plus 110 on Tipton. What do you think?
So here's why I wouldn't play it, because I'm counting on the long ball for Mason Tipton. I do think Vele is going to get more volume, and it's going to be up to Mason Tipton to actually get that connection right. I think the number's good, so the plus money, but I do think Tipton's going to be less involved, but more likely to catch a deep ball.
Both quarterbacks, this is from our pal at the chat, Gipper's Picks, both quarterbacks combined for 50 plus rushing, minus 120. I don't mind it at all. Again, if one team is up and not trying to get creative with the quarterback situation, like if one team is up big, the other team is probably going to have their quarterback scrambling a lot more frequently. And so I think you could get there. You could get there with Bo Nix could not rush much at all, which I don't think is likely. And you could see Rattler get there, or Rattler doesn't rush much. And I think you see Bo Nix get there. So yeah, I think that's a good look there from Gippers.
I think, I'm kind of on the opposite side. with needing two quarterbacks to do it, I would weirdly like both of their overs, but combine them and only getting minus 120 on that prop. It feels like too much needs to happen. I want a better number there.
That's fair.
Yeah.
You could just take the over on both guys and I would think worst case
if you parlay the over on both of them, what are you getting there? Like plus 200, and
that's a good point.
That's kind of what you're hoping for when you get this.
And I think you're at like 48 right there anyway. Yeah, that's a good point. All right, RJ, always smarter than me. Jeffrey says, what's up? Took Broncos team total over 19.5 and over 35.5 parlay plus 128. Thoughts?
I mean, I think RJ likes it. I think Mike McClure probably likes it because I know in the early edge this morning, he had the over 36.5.
Yep. I would agree. I think, Mike Sharp Mike's very, I don't know what he was going to be sharp as. I trailed off there, but Mike is extremely sharp and he liked the over in this game. Mike M, maybe that's Mike McClure asking questions in the chat. He's desperate for sharp information here. Kamara over 4.5 catches minus 1.5, 155 or yards, 35.5 minus 140. Will, can you ask Proppy and Sia, please? Proppy, well, I guess RJ had the Kamara over, but I mean, I think we all agree laying the juice with Kamara, and you'd rather lay less juice always, but laying the juice with Kamara catches is not a problem here.
Sorry, I'm on Kamara's under. I don't know. Did you want to ask RJ on the? He's back
were you on Kamara's under receptions?
Combined yardage.
You're on his yardage total, but I think he can catch a ton of passes and go for like 3 yards apiece, a la the Derek Carr offense.
Yeah, I wouldn't quite recommend though playing both.
No,
they're conflicting props. So
yeah,
if you're rolling with me, we're not backing the receptions and.
No, I would. Yeah, if you're taking Kamara's under rushing receiving yards, don't take his over on receptions. Although certainly both could get there.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll say this. I mean, RJ did. Correct me if I'm wrong. When he put this through or first gave it out, the number wasn't minus 155. Is that right, RJ? I mean, you're definitely paying premium price wise at this number, but he should.
Right. We did minus 125 on the site, minus 140 when I sent it in for the show a few hours before the show, and it's up to 155 now, which I still like, but it's not great. Obviously, you're giving up 30 cents there from what we gave out on SportsLine.
I'd probably almost rather, if I was doing that, just go alt reception 6. And get some plus money if you're going to do that. Just because like in this game script, he's, just my thought.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Preppy. It's Proppy, but we'll excuse Walter Rogers Jr. Do you like Miller or Williams tonight? I assume he means Keandre Miller or Javonte Williams. And I assume your answer is Javonte.
Yeah. Probably Jamal Williams, right? The backup Saints running backs.
Keandre Miller or Jamal Williams. Yeah. Oh, interesting. Maybe this is a DFS question.
I'd like to see Kendrick Williams get some run. Obviously, been activated starting the season on PUP. Yeah, he should be active tonight for the first time this year. So I still have somewhat lofty expectations for Kendrick Miller. Certainly from a draft capital standpoint, the Saints invested heavily in him. But yeah, just for whatever reason, hasn't been able to get onto the field. So hopefully he can mix in tonight for 5 to 7 touches. It'll be interesting to see. Definitely someone I have my eye on, and potentially Kamara handling these big workloads down the stretch. He could become a viable option.
Finally, Andrew Simon asked, Will Lutz over 1.5 field goals? I was just building out a DFS lineup, and I was like, wait a minute. I feel like the kickers are going to be heavily owned.
Go over.
Yeah, I like the over there too.
But I feel like they're going to kick a ton of field goals in this game.
That would be why I said the over.
Yes.
Okay. I'm trying to extract information from a DFS perspective for my own personal usage.
What I was saying, you start the ball further up because of the kickoff rule, and it's indoors, so it doesn't take much to get you to 2 field goals. It's if Bo Nix in this offense is as good as y'all say it is, then they're going to be in field goal range a ton. And are they going to get touchdowns on all these plays? The total doesn't tell you they're going to get touchdowns on all these plays. So, they got to have a middle ground somewhere. Lutz feels like he's got to hit multiple field goals in that situation.
Will Lutz revenge game as well too. Yeah. Don't buy the Saints. I know everyone was thinking about that. Okay. Parlay time. Let's get to do we have a goose parlay? We have a goose parlay. How come goose parlays get certain graphics and nobody's built out a Brinson parlay graphic? What's up with that?
This would be designed, but Goose did not make a parlay.
Oh, that's actually. I think that's my parlay.
Okay, yeah, this is a
So Goose doesn't have a parlay. Well, you know what? I have magically transformed into, like, I have using my telekinetic powers have obtained a goose. What Goose wants, and probably like, this doesn't look like something I would bet. We're gonna go over Alvin Kamara receptions 4.5, over Cortland Sutton receptions 3.5. Again, both of those are pretty juiced. Bub Means and Devon Vele each to get to 25 receiving yards. So we're not asking much there. Bo Nix to get to 25 rushing yards, and over 22.5 Spencer Rattler rushing yards. That pays out 20-1. Not bad, right? We're talking like 5 catches, 4 catches, 25, 25, 25, 23. Like, this is minimal yardage production from some guys that almost have to be involved from a volume perspective in this offense, these offenses.
Fair.
I mean, don't get me wrong. It's not like it's probably not hitting, but as far as 20-1 parlays go, you're asking, like, you know, what's the meme where it's like something like, we didn't ask, like, it's like the bar was low, but holy bleep. Like, I mean, like, if we don't get here, that's what we got going on. So that's our.
Can I interest you in the RJ parlay at 60-1?
Yeah.
Ooh, yeah.
Oh, thanks.
It's the fade proppy parlay. If you don't like that, if you don't want to play the under Kamara on that combination because you have him on your fantasy team, how about we go 100 plus receiving yards, 100 plus rushing yards, 60-1. Let's have a massive
60-1 for Kamara to have a massive day.
100 on both sides. Not going to happen, but you know, that's something fun to root for. If he's at 65 at halftime for rushing and 40 something receiving, you're like, oh, come on, get me there. We can probably get there with one big run and then a bunch of catches.
Yeah, well, I don't know if you guys are. I have the baseball game on in the other room, and like, there's the Yankees guys are screaming. Or I guess I think it was back-to-back jacks by Judge and Stanton there.
Standard.
Yeah.
I have a plus 825, Will, if we want to.
Yeah, of course.
We can bring that up. Sean Ritchie asked, hey, you know, somebody hit a parlay last Thursday, but he forgot who it was. That was me, and it was plus 900. So we're going back to that vicinity of 5-leg parlay. This one plus 825. So alt total here. This is at BetMGM under 47. So by the way, RJ could still hit his band 41 to 50, and this could still come in. Under 47 is quite the alternate line. Javonte Williams rushing yards over 43.5. We already talked about that. Mason Tipton receiving yards over 23.5. Again, he's my ladder play, but I included the just standard line in this parlay. Broncos -3. You already know I like that. And Bub Means to record 25 plus receiving yards. It was either between that or Cedric Wilson over 16.5 receiving yards. If you think Bub Means is a little overrated tonight, you can go with Cedric Wilson or something else. But this parlay seems very reasonable, and it's plus 825.
Let's not pull that down yet, because I didn't bet Sia's last parlay, and I just want to get these. I want to get these in really quickly. I just need to add this. I like this though. Javonte over.
While you're doing that, if you want to go crazy, you could take Mason Tipton's alt line, and at BetMGM, you'd have to go like 50 plus. And you could take Denver Broncos again. This is if you want to go crazy, to an alt line of -6. This parlay explodes to like plus something crazy when you do that. You could even go even crazier with an anytime touchdown for somebody like Javonte Williams. But there's a lot of ways to make this parlay even juicier than plus 825. But I do think this is pretty reasonable.
Okay, so I need to add Bub Means and Javonte Williams. I'm not going to hold up the show any longer.
I was going to start throwing out names that screw you up. Mark Ingram under, Derek Carr over.
I mean, I guess I also could just don't worry, I'll forget to put it in. John, I can't find Elway on here. We've all had our first touchdown bet called back before, and BetMGM is giving you a second chance. With BetMGM's Pro Football Second Chance, place any first touchdown score bet, and if your player doesn't score first but scores second, get your entire stake back in cash. No opt-in required. Here's how it works. Place a pregame straight first touchdown score bet in any NFL game. If your player scores a first touchdown of the game, win your wager is normal. If your player scores a second touchdown of the game, you'll get your stake back in cash. It's that simple. Log into BetMGM for more details. And that brings us to our diamond hands of the night. I believe we have two gentlemen here with diamonds above their names. I don't know who was it who was like, whoa, when producer Harry had accidentally, it was probably hadn't been on in like a couple of days. And Harry, I don't know if Harry understood the concept of you get one diamond for every hit you get. He just put one diamond above everybody, and probably was like so mad. He's like, whoa. He's like, what did you guys go nuts this weekend? I didn't see these bets. Not the case. RJ and Proppy each have a first touchdown score. Like, I'll get mine out of the way early. I went chalky. I didn't really feel good. I hate this. Don't bet. It'll probably be Bo Nix, but don't bet Bo Nix. It's no fun. It's 10-1 for like, I mean, a guy who runs the ball around the goal line a lot, but I mean, there are so many random ass guys with decent numbers available in this game, all of whom could be involved and all of whom could catch the first touchdown, that you really want to expand your horizons when you're making this pick. So shame on me for Bo Nix. If it hits, I'll still take the diamond. I got to tell you, Sia, I love your guy, especially with Greg Dulcich out. This is a great number on a guy on a tight end for the Broncos who's been prominently involved.
Well, Will, you've kind of put yourself in a spot here because you were just deriding somebody for not knowing the gem rules. But what you don't realize historically, and I know Proppy knows where I'm going here, if you got a gem, you get to go first. And
I didn't. No one has ever told me.
I've told you before, Brinson.
The first person who have ever gotten a gem this year, I believe, is Propstarz.
I apologize. Then that is on me. I actually really just wanted to get Bo Nix out of the way so I could go and like fill in this parlay. Proppy, take it away with your guy on the Broncos.
I do want to say I love RJ's pick of Juwan Johnson, and Sia's got a good look too. But I'm going to go with Devon Vele here just because I like his prop as well. Decent odds. He's going to run a route on every single Bo Nix drop back. Josh Reynolds inactive tonight, I believe, as well. So should have close to like 100% route participation. And considering 14 targets, he's played 2 full games, has 14 targets, 12 receptions for roughly 140 yards. He's been productive when he's been on the field, and he's drawn plenty of targets as well, shown some chemistry with Bo Nix in the process. So against a depleted Saints secondary, missing multiple key starters, I'll go with Devon Vele.
And Reynolds is on IR. That's why Vele got back on the field last week. I believe it's a fractured finger for Reynolds. But, yeah, you're not going to see him much for the next few weeks.
RJ, you also have a diamond. Who you got?
Yeah, we talked up Juwan Johnson earlier. Denver's offense has had only 2 touchdowns in the first half all year, and both were against the beat-up Tampa defense. Sia mentioned that they won 2 games on the road. Both had mitigating factors. The Bucs had a mountain of injuries in that game on the defensive side. And then the other one was that ugly rain Jets game where Bo Nix had negative yardage in the first half, and they still somehow won that game. Not a great look for Bo Nix in that game. I wouldn't hang his hat on that. But Denver's offense, not great in the first half, like I just said. Denver's given up just 1 touchdown to a receiver all year, but 2 to tight ends, and both were the first touchdowns in those games. We had a long Brock Bowers touchdown, and then we had a shorter touchdown in the other one they gave up. I wouldn't mind playing Rattler, but at plus 1,300 doesn't feel as good enough value compared to Johnson at plus 1,800. I think it's a really fun week for everyone to grab somebody because then 2 number 1 running backs are the only ones off limits for us, and then you can take Bo Nix, you can take whoever you think the number 1 receiver is on each side. Even Cortland Sutton's out here at plus 1,000. Who you think you get a number 1 receiver for the team that's favored, as a first touchdown at 10-1 and be able to take it. And we're all saying no. We're finding some other fun names here like Devon Vele, Juwan Johnson, and Sia's pick.
Yeah, good transition. I Sutton at plus 1,000 makes a lot of sense. So I think he's the first read on anything inside the 20 when Bo Nix goes back to pass. But I do think he's going to give up on his reads once he gets past Cortland Sutton. And if you're going to do that, you're going to do one of 2 things. You're either going to rush and you're going to scramble and maybe buy some time or just buy some yards, or you're going to look for your 6'6", 260-pound athletic tight end who's probably going to be in the middle of the field, partially covered, but can probably out jump and outreach whoever is covering him. So I like him as a big target. We know Greg Dulcich is inactive, so it's really Kroll and Adam Troutman, and I think Kroll is starting to become a guy that Sean Payton really likes. I'm speculating a little bit there, But if he's on the field, he's going to be a great target for Bo Nix. He's 30-1. I noticed in some markets, somebody mentioned it in the chat, he's dropped to 40-1 in some places. And that drop just happened in the last 45 minutes. So check that better number out if you can get it.
I dig it. All right. Just to clarify on this parlay of yours, it was Broncos minus, I got 2.5, which you prefer, right? I mean,
yeah, that's better.
Oh, yeah. Toss it back up, Nada. Let me make sure I'm not doing this wrong. Under 47, Javonte Williams over rush yards up to 46.5. I think that's okay.
Wow.
Mason Tipton, 25 yards. Bub Means, 25 yards. And then I got a little 30% boost I can throw in that thing to make it like 14-1.
Yeah, that Javonte Williams number going up 3 yards is pretty significant. That tells me that there's some info that whatever people thought Audric Estime might be getting or cutting into Javonte's carries, or maybe even Jaleel, may not happen, because that's a pretty big move, I think, because at BetMGM it was 43.5. I put this in maybe 90 minutes ago.
Okay, and I'm shopping around here. Would you go the over 46.5 or just let it get to 40 yards for 12-1, 40 yards? It's not bad.
I'd let it just get to 40 yards.
Yeah, I think that's the play. Okay. Yep. All right, let's recap our bets. I think that's what Nada was actually scrolling towards when I saw him doing that, or maybe he heard my desperation here. I've got Cortland Sutton over 3.5 receptions. You can shop around and get a good number there. Bo Nix over 25.5 rushing yards. Bo Nix first touchdown, and I'm on the Broncos as well. Proppy on the Broncos plus Devon Vele over 31.5 receiving yards. Javonte Williams over 67.5 rush and receive yards. Alvin Kamara under 109.5 rush and receiving yards. Sia on the Broncos and Lucas Kroll first touchdown plus the Mason Tipton ladder. And RJ's on the Saints plus 3. Total points 41-50 plus 260. Love that look. Kamara over 4.5 receptions. Juwan Johnson over 27.5 yards, and Juwan Johnson first touchdown score. You know, this is one of those games, guys. We joke about it going in, but when it's July and we're like itching for football, you'd be like, look, you can cut off my pinky if you put on Saints and Broncos right now. Like, that's like, give me this game. It's really like middle of May when we're so far away from football.
Or even better than that, when you're in week 3 of the UFL and you're like, this is not football. Yeah. Give me the NFL.
Yeah, that's right. All right. Great show as always, fellas. Killed it. Let's cash some of these parlays. Let's cash all our bets, and let's end up with a great game for RJ, for Proppy, for Sia. I'm Brinson. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. See you guys later.